everybody, welcome back to Furniture Flipping Teacher. My name is Lauren. If you're new here, welcome. We are going to do a 6-month recap of the past 6 months of me selling furniture on Facebook Marketplace, and I just want to show you exactly how much money I was able to earn in the last 6 months of 2024 by flipping furniture, and hopefully inspire you to get out there, find some furniture, and flip it for some profit. Who doesn't love a little bit of profit, especially going into the new year? All right, let's get into it. Here are the flips. First up, we have this 4-piece bedroom furniture set that I got on Facebook Marketplace for $300. When I got it home, I realized that it was from a smoker's home, so I knew that I had my work cut out for me and that this is going to take a lot of work just to get to the primer and paint portion of the project. I started by cleaning every surface of each piece of furniture. This took quite a long time as I was really trying to get all that smoke smell out. I began by scrubbing everything down with a rag and some simple green. And then I moved on to using a drill attachment to scrub the surfaces as well. Then I took some odor bully spray and sprayed it all over the surfaces inside and out with the odor bully to hopefully continue to eliminate some of that smoke smell. Then I cleaned everything one more time and filled all of the hardware holes with Bondo so that I could install new hardware on the pieces of furniture toward the end of the project. I removed the bases that were on the pieces of furniture, and later on I'll be creating new bases. Then I took my Surf Prep sander and used a 120 grit sandpaper to scuff sand all of the surfaces of each piece of furniture. This is going to really help the primer adhere well to the surface of the pieces of furniture. Also, while I was scuff sanding, I went ahead and sanded all of the Bondo smooth as well. Next, I brought the pieces outside and sprayed them top to bottom with shellac-based primer. I got the sides of the drawers, the insides of the drawers, the bottoms of the drawers, the insides of the pieces, and everywhere in between. This was a really important step because it's going to seal in all of that remaining smoke smell and not let it seep through any longer. Back inside, I wrapped up all of the drawers and decided to prime with another stain-blocking primer that was again going to give us another layer of adhesion and blocking the smoke smell in. As I said before, this project needed a few extra steps than normal, but we got it done. I'm using my HomeRite Super Finish Max on this project to get the spraying job done quicker. Next, I use this color Dixie Belle chalk paint called Weeping Willow, and it is a nice soft sage green color that will give a muted pop of color. applied a second coat of paint with my Home Right sprayer, and all of the surfaces were completely painted, and then I moved on to a top coat for protection, since this specific chalk paint does not have a top coat built in. Last, I drilled holes for new hardware in every single drawer, and it was pretty much the same placement, but I did have to move them a tad bit, which is why I ended up filling them in the first place. Then I moved on to creating and cutting wood for each of the bases. I like to use red oak, so I measured everything and cut it using my miter saw. I started to assemble all of the furniture bases by creating pocket holes with my Craig Jig 720 Pro. Then I stained the bases with some Retique gel stain, screwed the bases to the bottom of each piece, and attached all of the brand new hardware. It started coming together, and I absolutely love the way that this set ended up turning out. And here's the before and here's the after. I think that this set came out amazing. I listed it on Facebook Marketplace, and it was only listed for a few weeks before I started getting a little bit of interest, and I ended up selling it for $2,250, which I was actually really pleased with. It was a solid wood set, but I wasn't sure with the color and just how it all came together. I loved it, but was someone else gonna love it? I wasn't sure. So after spending $560 in the cost of the dressers and the materials that I used to actually flip the pieces, I profited $1,690 on this project. I'm so glad that I was able to get all that smoke smell off so that my work didn't go to waste, and the new owner absolutely loved the end result. Next, I decided to tackle some non-conventional pieces of furniture. I typically collect a lot of mirrors that come with dressers, but I don't typically flip them with the set of furniture. So my stash of mirrors was piling up, and I decided why not go ahead and just flip them like I flipped the dressers. So I had a couple of ideas when it came to these mirrors, and I started with this ornate mirror that came with a French provincial piece of furniture. I masked off the mirror portion and painted the rim of the mirror in a black chalk paint called Caviar by Dixie Belle. And then I went over it with a brush and some gold gilding wax, also by Dixie Belle, that would give it a little bit of depth. I was trying to recreate a mirror that is really popular right now. And so after I got that gold gilding wax on there, I was able to take the masking off. I think that this turned out really close to the replica of the trending mirrors nowadays, and I love the final result of this one. Next, there was a mirror that came with a pine dresser, so I started off by cleaning the mirror really well along the outside, and then I did a scuff sand and filled in some of the holes that were created from the previous owner. Then I masked off the mirror and I was able to sand the edges of the mirror and prime it with a stain blocking primer. Then I started with a base coat of this pretty ivory color, and then I used painter's tape to create stripes that I then filled in with another color of paint, giving it this striped look. I think it gives it a really fun twist on a mirror that is not so conventional. The next mirror that I began working on was this large rectangular wooden mirror, and I started off by cleaning and scuff sanding the surface of the frame of the mirror, and then I masked off the mirror portion. I took some wood glue and these wooden balls that I got off Amazon and glued them to the outside of the mirror. Then I used Retique liquid wood and I applied 2 or 3 coats of the wooden primer, which has 60% wood fibers involved in it. And this would allow me to create a universal wood color from the frame and the wooden balls instead of having them like a dark color and a light color. So I applied a gel stain to create some depth, and then I went in with a little bit of white paint and I dry brushed kind of to create a beech wood look. This one was probably my favorite mirror out of all the ones that I did, and it sold pretty quickly as well. The fourth mirror also had a wooden frame, and I began cleaning everything. For this one, instead of masking it off, I ended up taking the mirror out of the frame, and I was super careful not to break it because I have definitely broken some mirrors in the past. Then I used some fabric that I picked up at Joann's, and I attached the fabric to the frame of the mirror using some spray adhesive. I made sure everything was nice and straight, and this boho fabric complemented this mirror so much. I folded up the corners and reinstalled the mirror and the mirror backer board, and I thought that the mirror turned out super nice and unique. Next up is this arched mirror that came off of an oak dresser. I loved the shape of this one, but I just decided to go with a simple look on this. Instead of having this orange wood look, I decided to just go ahead and paint it black. Black is super simple, and again, it is more of a trending arched mirror that is so in style right now. After I painted on a couple of coats of the black paint, I decided to use a spray-on top coat to reduce any potential streaking in a top coat that I may apply with a brush. Although this was a simple flip, I thought that the black paint really elevated the look of this arched mirror. Last but not least, I took the second ornate mirror and attempted to revive it with some restorative finish, but then I realized that it was actually plastic and not wood, so that would not work. So instead, I began masking off the entire mirror this time instead of just the edges, and I brought it outside to do some spray paint along the edges with this pretty gold color. Again, kind of the same look as the first mirror, but a little bit different. I scraped off the masking and here's the final result. This one wasn't my favorite mirror, but it was definitely better than a chipped plastic mirror. All in all, I flipped these 6 mirrors and I have sold 4 of them so far. I sold the first ornate mirror for $100. I sold the mirror with the stripes for $90. I sold the mirror with the wooden balls around it for $110, and I sold the black arched mirror for $100. So we're in for a total of all 4 of those sold for $400, and I probably spent around $50 with materials on all 6 of the mirrors. So we're in for a profit of $350. Since the mirrors just came with the furniture anyway, I include the price in the pieces of furniture and not these mirrors, so all of that is pure profit. For my next project, I got to work with this 4-piece Ethan Allen set of furniture that I got on Facebook Marketplace for $300. My first step in the flipping process was to remove all of the hardware. There were quite a few pieces of hardware, including on the sides of some of the nightstands, which was super weird to me. But I got all of that removed, and then I cleaned the surfaces of all 4 pieces, and I took out the drawers as well so that I could clean the insides too. I scuff sanded this glossy furniture with a 120 grit and an electric race sander. While I was scuff sanding everything, I also sanded down the Bondo when I had filled in the hardware holes. Once all of that was smooth, I used a shellac-based primer in the spray can and I drilled new holes for hardware. I typically like to try and drill the holes for the hardware before I start to paint. Sometimes I forget, but this is gonna help eliminate the chance of messing up any nice paint job by drilling holes and maybe something happening. Next, I used the Bear Spray chalk paint in the color Caviar from Home Depot. This was the first time that I had ever spray painted a piece of furniture like this with a can of spray paint versus like a true paint sprayer. I definitely underestimated how much paint this project would take because it is a 4-piece set. It's giant. So if I were to do this again, I would definitely choose like 2 nightstands or something much, much smaller. Once I got the bodies of the dresser and the nightstands all sprayed, I decided to put in the drawers so that I had an easier time spraying the drawers. I also got smart and whipped out my spray can nozzle trigger. That definitely did not hurt my finger as much. After I got the first coat on, I was noticing that some of the hardware holes that I had filled in were still visible, so I went back with my Bondo spot putty and covered those up. Once I got all of those sanded smooth again, I was able to do another coat of black spray paint on the entire surface. After the black spray paint was dry, I went back and did 2 coats of the matte clear coat so that everything was protected. Notice that I used spray primer, spray paint, and spray top coat all on this set. I was going for more of a lime wash look, and I think that it was very well executed. Then I installed the new knobs everywhere, and here's a look at what it looked like before. then here is the after. This is one of my top favorite projects of 2024. I love the way that it turned out. The furniture is super high quality, and I had to be super patient with this piece or with this set because it sat for quite a while on Facebook Marketplace, but I did end up finally selling it for $2,100, and the owners absolutely loved it. They were moving into a new house and they were stoked to get this piece of furniture in their home. So I spent $525 on the set and on the cost of all the materials that it took me to flip this piece, this set of furniture. And so the total profit was $1,575. I purchased these nightstands at a Goodwill for just $70 for the pair. I think that they had really good bones, but just needed a little bit of an update. So I removed the old hardware and cleaned the surfaces with Simple Green and a rag, along with my drill attachment on the tops, because those were just a little extra dirty. Then I took my Surf Prep sander with a 120 grit and I removed the finish on the tops of each piece of furniture. They were pine tops, so it was a softer wood, but I am going to stain that later. I also scuff sanded the remaining surfaces so that the paint and primer would adhere really well. I got rid of all of the dust and taped off the tops, as well as the drawers, and I also filled in the original hardware holes so that I could create a new hole and add new hardware later. I used my Wagner Flexio 5000 and sprayed on a stain blocking primer in a gray color, and I did 2 coats of this for really good coverage to make sure that all of the stains and tannins could be blocked in. I mixed up a couple of navy colors and came out with this beautiful blue that is super popular in my area right now. I love the way that this color turned out. I thought that the dark navy blue needed to have a dark top, so I stained with some water-based gel stain by Lily Moon Paint. And I like to use a blue sponge and a little bit of some water to apply the gel stain. Then I used a zebra top coat brush to apply a couple of layers of this glossy top coat to protect the top. Next, I marked holes for new hardware and drilled new holes and installed the new hardware. I did this on both drawers, and then I had to go back for some touch-ups on the tops of the doors since I had sprayed with them closed. New hardware got installed on the doors as well, so here's a look at the before. and here we are now. I got these listed on Facebook Marketplace for $400, and then I was able to sell them for that full asking price within 24 hours. I was super stoked about how quickly these nightstands got sold. I spent around $155 on the cost and the materials of this flip, so that gave me a total profit of $245. Another 4-piece set that I found on Facebook Marketplace and only spent $100 on is this Pennsylvania house set of furniture. This one was definitely a labor of love, but the way that it turned out in the end was so worth it. I removed all of the hardware and got to work cleaning this pretty dusty set. It came out of a bedroom that probably hadn't been cleaned in quite a while. So I cleaned everything with my vacuum first to eliminate a lot of the dust before wiping everything off with my cleaner. Next, I took my furniture prep cleaner and cleaned every surface and the backs and the bottoms and the tops and the sides and everything. After all of the cleaning was done, I used my Surf Prep sander with an 80 grit sandpaper and sanded all of the tops to raw wood. This set is 100% solid wood, so I didn't have to worry about any of the veneer getting sanded too much. After using an 80 grit sandpaper, I went down to 120 grit sandpaper and then down to 220 grit sandpaper to make sure that everything was nice and smooth. Next, I did a 120 grit scuff sand on all the surfaces and the drawers, and I wanted to tackle some of the frills down below on the bases of the pieces of furniture. I used my jigsaw to remove a lot of the curvature on the bottoms of the pieces, and then I added a long straight board on the 2 larger dressers to cover up any more curves. Then I taped off the tops of the furniture with some plastic, and I started priming with my Wagner Flexio 5000. I used a gray primer for this project, and remember that this primer is going to help the paint adhere nicely as well as block any stains that may pop through from the wood tannins. Then I used the color Glacier from Dixie Belle's Silk Paint and sprayed 2 coats with my Wagner Flexio 5000. The spray gun truly makes the job go so much faster, especially on a 4-piece set. So if you're interested in my sprayer course, I'll have a link down below for you to check out. And I'll also have all of the original project video links down below. The paint that I'm using already has a top coat built in, so I didn't need to worry about adding an additional top coat. Once 2 coats of glacier was sprayed, I removed the plastic from the tops and stained the tops of the pieces a couple of times with It gel stain. The color could not have been more pretty, and I sealed everything with a couple layers of top coat and reinstalled all of the hardware. Instead of replacing this hardware with new, I decided, since there were so many pieces, to just update the hardware with some bronze gilding wax. I brought everything out to the main floor for staging and got the hardware back on. I thought everything came together super well. Here is a before. And here is the after. Still a super simple flip, but I wanted to make it fit into the modern home. These were listed on Facebook Marketplace for several months awaiting the new buyer, and I did come down a little bit, but I ended up selling them for $1,750. They came and picked them up, and after spending only $240 on this set of furniture, since the buy-in was so low, I ended up profiting $1,510. For the next project, I was able to customize this piece of furniture from my inventory for a client that was looking for a piece of furniture to hold all of her records. I was super excited about this piece of furniture because ever since I bought it, I was excited to get to work on it. And it's been a couple of years that I've had it in the shop, so needless to say, I was super stoked. I got to work by removing all of the outer edges of these wooden pieces on the piece of furniture. This was a little bit controversial when I shared this video at the first place, but ultimately my client and I decided that it was super busy with those extra wood details, and some of them were chipping off anyway, so this was the best way to kind of make it a little bit more modern, but still keep the mid-century vibe. Once all of those outer pieces were removed, I sanded off the finish because it was really failing, and so it was really easy to go ahead and just sand all the finish off. I was really just scuff sanding, but sometimes it just comes right off. After smoothing everything out and scuff sanding the surface, I took a lot of Bondo to fill in where I had to remove those wooden pieces. This took quite a bit of time and patience, but with my Surf Prep sander, anything is possible. This piece is going to be a two-tone look, so I also sanded down the wooden details that I left on the doors so that we could stain them in a different color than the body of the piece. I stained the designs with the Lily Moon Smoky Gel Stain in the color Tennessee Whiskey, which is one of my top favorite stain colors. I like to use a little bit of water and just apply the stain with a blue sponge or a rag. Next, it was time to clean the body of the piece of furniture and make any repairs that needed to be made. There was a little bit of peeling veneer on the sides and then a couple of chunks missing on the top, so I got to work by using Bondo to make those repairs. I set the doors up on some painter's pyramids and used my bin shellac primer and a spray can to prime everything really well. The bin primer is a great primer to block any stains and also has very great adhesion properties. I sprayed the body of the piece as well, and then once the primer was dry, I went back with a sponge sand attachment on my sander and smoothed out all of the primer. I rolled on the second coat of primer because I didn't have enough of it in the can to do a coat 2, and I just thought it needed it. Next is my HomeRite Super Finish Max, and I sprayed the entire surface black with Dixie Belle's paint in the color Anchor. This is my go-to black. It is just absolutely beautiful. My client wanted a matte finish, so I did not top coat this since the silk paint already had a built-in top coat, and it does have a matte finish. Next, on the inside of the cabinet, I used some Restore finish in the color Walnut to revive the wood just a little bit. We wanted to keep it wood inside so that it could kind of complement the outside pieces on the doors. I reattached all of the doors, which took a little bit of patience to get everything just right since the hinges were kind of funky, but I was able to get it done and then put the drawers in and sprayed it with some water to help me remove all of my fingerprints and get it all cleaned up. Here is the before and here is the after. Again, I feel like I say this a lot, but this was truly one of my favorite projects of 2024. I think that the transformation was just enough to make it modern, but yet it also still has that mid-century modern feel. I'm so glad that I was able to give it a new life for my client. She absolutely loved it and was super excited to get her records stored in there. Since then, they had been all put away in a closet, so this was perfect for her to be able to store them. I ended up selling and delivering this piece for $1,600, and I spent about $210 in costs and materials, so that is a total profit of $1,390. Next, we have these super damaged nightstands that I flipped in the beginning of the year to this orange color, which I really liked, and it was definitely like an out of the side of the box look, but they did not sell for over 6 months. So I decided that it was time to do a little change up with them. I removed all of the hardware that I had added, and then I filled in the existing hardware holes with Bondo so that I could replace that in the future. Then I was gonna keep the wood tops, so I taped those off and sanded down all of the Bondo. I taped off the drawers again, and since I had primed previously and I knew that the paint job was super good since I'm the one that did it, I didn't feel the need to sand it again or prime it all again. So I just took some blue paint, mixed it up into my HomeRite sprayer, and sprayed a couple of coats of the navy blue onto these surfaces of my nightstands and all the drawers. In between coats, I created new hardware holes for the new hardware, and then I did coat 2 on all the surfaces. Again, this paint has the top coat built in, so we were good to go there. And as I reassembled everything and put in the new hardware, I was loving this look so much better than the original orange. Again, here's where we started with the orange ones, and here we are now. Since those didn't sell, sometimes it's okay to pivot and take a new look at something. I'm so glad that I changed these to blue. The nightstands that I had previously just talked about a little bit ago sold so quick, so that's why I decided to go with the blue on these nightstands. And I'm so glad I did. I think that this hardware and this navy blue color really elevated the look of these pieces. And I posted them on Facebook Marketplace for $435. And after spending on the first makeover and the second makeover a total of $190. That gives me a total profit of $245. It's time for a 24-hour makeover. I found this piece of furniture at the thrift store for $50, and I had to scoop it up because I knew it had really great potential. First things first, I got rid of all of these ugly batwing hardware pulls. I was not going to be replacing it, so I set it aside to donate to the thrift store later. Then I took some simple green and my drill attachment brush, and I went to town cleaning everything up. Now, the paint that I'm going to be using on this piece does not require sanding or priming, but since I filled in all of the hardware holes with Bondo, I had to sand that area, and it did break through the finish a little bit. So the paint that I'm using has a bonding primer built into it, but not a stain blocking primer. So I did go ahead and spray it with some clear shellac just to make sure that there was going to be no bleed through from the wood tannins. I drilled new hardware holes in all of the drawers, and then I sprayed on that primer. I used the color Sage from Beyond Paint on this project, and Beyond Paint recommends that you use a roller and a chip brush to apply their paint. Also, it has a 2 to 4 hour recoat time, so once you get the first coat done, you can easily do a little bit of smooth sanding and then get back to work on coat 2. That's why I love this paint for a one-day makeover. Once I did the first coat, I noticed that there were quite a few scratches and superficial dents and dings in the top of the dresser. So I filled those in with some Bondo spot putty. And once that was dry, I sanded down that spot putty and added another coat of paint. This did take 3 coats of paint just because I had to do a little bit of paint removal once I got all of those filled in, but typically this paint will only take 2 coats. The brush is meant for the harder to reach areas, and the roller is to smooth everything out. I recommend that you do a light sanding between coats of paint just so that you can get a really smooth finish. Then I put all of the drawers back in and attached those brand new champagne bronze hardware that I got off Amazon, which I absolutely think is so beautiful. So again, here is another look at the before of the dresser that I got at the thrift store for just $50, which I thought actually was a really good price for this size dresser and this quality of dresser. So after spending $150 on materials and costs on this dresser flip, I ended up selling it for $720 to the same people who purchased the 4-piece Ethan Allen set. I always love it when I get customers in the store and they end up buying multiple pieces of furniture. It's so much fun. So I ended up with a total profit of $570 on this beautiful dresser. I dug this Lane cedar chest out of my furniture inventory that I have been holding on to for some time now because it's in really, really rough shape. I can't even believe it, but I spent $100 on this piece of furniture. So let's get started. First, I removed all of the hardware. This hardware is actually not functional, but it does add a little bit of fun to the overall look of this piece of furniture. So I will be putting it back on in just a little bit. Lane cedar chests need to have all of the locking mechanisms removed. So I did that as well, and then I cleaned everything with Simple Green. Next, it was time to do a little bit of sanding, and I did a mix of sanding to raw wood and scuff sanding, but it kind of all just led to sanding to raw wood because the finish was terribly failing and had a lot of texture. There was a couple of repairs that needed to be made on the top of the piece, and then I primed everything with a bin shellac-based primer. This again is going to help block any wood tannins from popping through as well, since I did sand the entire finish off and we were priming raw wood. I did 2 coats of the primer, and then I used the color Hampton Olive by Dixie Belle's Silk Paint, and I brushed it on with Zebra's new oval paintbrush, which is probably one of my new favorite paintbrushes to paint with. This holds quite a bit of paint and it helps with the coverage so much. I just love this green color, and the paint seriously glides right along the surface with this brush. I'll link the brush down below. I did a total of 3 coats of paint on the cedar chest, and then I cleaned out my brush with this brush comb. This is a lifesaver when you are cleaning out brushes to make sure that they are good to go for the next time. Next was the fun part. I removed the original base and measured for a new base, and then I cut the red oak wood to size with my miter saw. I used my Craig pocket hole jig to create pocket holes on all of the pieces in order to attach the base later. If you are interested in a full tutorial of how to make a base just like this, I have it linked down below where you can get a step-by-step guide. I secured everything with wood glue and pocket hole screws, and then I sanded the surface of the base and stained it with these water-based gel stains in Mudslide with Lily Moon paint. attached the base to the bottom of the cedar chest and revitalized the original hardware with some gold gilding wax and reinstalled that as well. Again, here is the before, this worn out lane cedar chest that needed a lot of love and attention, but have no fear, I made it over and I think that it looks 1,000 times better, and I know that the new owner absolutely loves it. It is actually a viewer of the channel. Shout outs to Laura, she is amazing. Hi Laura. All right, so I paid $100 for the chest, and it took me a while to tackle it, but I did tackle it, and then I ended up selling it to her for $300. So after spending a total of like $150, including the cost and the materials, I was able to still profit $150. I already had 2 pairs of blue nightstands that sold very well this year, so I decided to grab another pair of nightstands and get to work. First, I removed all of the original hardware and set it aside, and then I did not really like these embellishments on the sides here, so goodbye. I hammered them off. I removed all of the drawers and cleaned both the inside and the outsides of both of the nightstands. And then I decided to use this bamboo mat to cover up the sides of the nightstands where the embellishments kind of had ripped off a lot of the wood detail. Next, I scuff sanded everything and filled in some nail holes as well as the original hardware holes. And I taped off the drawers and primed everything with a stain blocking primer. I put 2 coats of the primer on and made some new hardware holes. And then I mixed this color deep sea and another blue for a dark navy color on these nightstands. Again, I have absolutely just been loving mixing colors. It is so fun to get a new color every time you flip. I sprayed on a couple of coats with this with my HomeRite Super Finish MAC, and then I put the drawers back in, staged everything really nice, and installed the new hardware. This was a pretty quick flip, and I was super pleased with the results. Here's the final results. I love them, and so did someone who purchased them in under 10 hours of me having them listed on Facebook Marketplace for full price of $450. There was no asking for wiggle room. I absolutely love when that happens because I don't really like going down, especially super early on when I have them listed. So after spending $150 on the nightstands and the cost of materials, I ended up with a total profit of $300 on these nightstands. For the next flip, I decided to do a long dresser and nightstand pair. I usually don't do only one nightstand and a long dresser, but I found it at the thrift store and had other plans for it, but that backfired, so here we are. I started out by removing all the hardware as usual, and then I wanted to remove some of these wood embellishments on the fronts of the drawers. I thought that they were just too chunky and we needed to modernize them a little bit. So I popped those off with my paint scraper and a hammer, and then I sprayed everything down with some simple green and cleaned all of the surfaces. This set was pretty dirty since it had been sitting in the shop for quite a while, and there was a lot of dust that goes around in the shop and it gets all over the place. So this was definitely much needed cleaning. Next, the top of this piece was miserably failing, so I sanded everything back with my orbital sander and a 80 grit sandpaper. Again, this was a solid wood top, so I did not have to worry about going through the veneer at all. After I got the top all sanded down with 80 grit, 120 grit, and 220 grit, I sanded everything else as well with just a 120 grit to kind of roughen up the surface a little bit and make sure that the primer would have something to adhere to. I decided to do a fluted look on this set to cover up where I had taken off the embellishments, since there were like these really deep holes and it was going to be really tricky to fill and get evened out with Bondo. I cut these half round dowels with my miter saw to the size of the drawers, and then I used some wood glue and attached them all just on the top drawers of each piece. I made sure that everything was nice and level and straight before it dried on there so that it didn't look like a hack job. Next, I wrapped all the drawers with my favorite tape and plastic duo, and then I got to work spraying the primer with my Wagner Flexio 5000. Again, spraying is just going to make the job so much faster, and it looks so much better. I mixed up some more blue and ended up with this really pretty teal color that I sprayed on 2 coats each, and I loved the look of it. Again, mixing the paint is so much fun. The one tip that I have is if you decide not to measure your paint, make sure you at least have enough to cover the full surface of whatever pieces you are painting. I drilled holes for new hardware with my hardware jig and a drill bit, and I put the drawers back in and installed the new hardware. Here is a flashback to what it looked like before this chunky, outdated set of furniture. And here are the pieces now. I think it turned out super cool, and I cannot wait to try some fluting on another piece of furniture. This set sold fairly quickly within a couple of weeks for full asking price at $740. And after spending $230 on the cost and the materials, I ended up profiting $510 from this set. I flipped these 3 chairs back at the beginning of the year, and it did take them quite a while to sell, but they did sell, so let's talk about it. As you guys may know, if you've been around a while, I actually have been flipping velvet chairs for quite some time now, probably around 3 or 4 years, and I have probably flipped over 100 velvet chairs, and this is exactly how I do it every single time. First things first, I always start by ripping off the skirts of the bottoms of each chair. This is going to be a big modernization to the chairs instead of having those granny skirts down below. We like to expose the legs or expose the swivel rockers, whichever one your chair has. Remember that every single chair is made differently, so it's important to examine how the skirt is attached before you just dive in. Trust me, I have learned my lesson several times. It is just so important to check and see how it is attached so that you can easily detach it. After I got the skirts all ripped off, then it's time to clean the chairs. Some of these chairs had a little bit more spots and stains than others, so I like to spot treat all of my chairs with Folex. This is a stain remove. Then I grabbed my Bissell little green machine and sprayed the fabric with cleaning solution, and then used the upholstery cleaner attachment to suck out all of the dirt and dust and stains from each chair. This part is super satisfying and allows you to see the full transformation right before your eyes. Next, I staged each chair and listed them on Facebook Marketplace. These were listed on there for quite some time, like several months, 6 to 8 months. Luckily, I have space so that I could hold them, and I finally did some finagling with the listings on Facebook Marketplace, but I was able to sell them pretty quickly after I changed things up on Facebook Marketplace. So the blue chair sold first for $175, and then I sold the pair of off-white chairs for $225, and after spending $75 total on the 3 chairs, including the cleaning materials and things like that, I sold them for $400 total and ended up with a total profit of $325. This next flip was probably my top favorite project of 2024. I started out with this Thomasville dresser that is solid wood and absolutely beautiful. And the biggest perk was that I only spent $30 on it at the thrift store. I got all of the original hardware removed because there was a few missing pieces and it just was really difficult to find that exact hardware. So I ended up just getting rid of that. Once everything was removed, I cleaned the surface of this piece with my furniture prep cleaner. Again, this piece was super dusty because it's been sitting in the shop for quite some time. I made sure to label all of the drawers as usual so that I could make sure to put them back in the exact same holes. And then I went to my miter saw to cut up a wooden round dowel so that I could fill in the large hardware holes before also using Bondo. I put in a little bit of wood glue and then slipped in the dowels, and it fit in the holes way better than a bunch of Bondo would do. Next, I sanded down the entire top since the finish was failing quite bad. Then I applied the Bondo to the hardware holes and got started sanding the base of the piece of furniture. I wanted to do a stain on the bottom, so I sanded it all the way down to raw wood. And then I went back to the drawers and sanded down the Bondo. And they needed a little bit more filling, so I added a little bit more Bondo and then smoothed that out once that was all hardened up. Next, I wrapped all the drawers with this tape and plastic combo and filled up my sprayer with some clear stain blocking primer. I like to use clear when I'm doing a dark color instead of going from a dark dresser to light primer and then back to dark paint. It's easier for me to go from a dark dresser to dark paint, so that's why sometimes clear primer is perfect. Then I sanded the clear primer smooth and painted a couple of coats of Dixie Belle's silk paint in the color Anchor with my HomeRite Super Finish Max sprayer. I wanted this to have a little bit more of a glossy look, not quite gloss, but not matte either. So I went with a satin clear coat and I top coated the entire piece. Even though the silk paint already has the top coat built in, I wanted a little bit of extra protection. And then, like I said, I wanted a different sheen. The silk paint has a matte sheen and I wanted satin. After that, I peeled off all the tape on the base and stained the furniture with the color Tennessee Whiskey, which is a water-based gel stain from Lily Moon Paint. I had big ideas for this piece, so I drilled holes for all the new hardware that I bought on Amazon, which has this apothecary style look. I had to be very, very careful and very, very precise on the measurements and the placements of all of these hardware holes, because if one was off, all of them were going to be off. It did take me several hours to get these hardware holes just right and perfect, but ultimately I was able to get the job done. So here's a before again, this outdated Thomasville dresser that needed a little bit of love. And I had a vision for it, and here it is now. It totally came to life. I have been wanting to do an apothecary piece of furniture for some time now, and I'm so glad that I did. I listed this on Facebook Marketplace for $925, and although it did sit for about a month or two, I was able to sell it for full asking price at $925. So after spending about $150 on the cost and the materials of this flip, I ended up with a total profit of $775. This last flip was something that I found at Goodwill for just $50, and it had really good bones. It was a Broyhill dresser, so we were starting off on a good foot there, but I got started by cleaning everything and removing the original hardware. I knew I wasn't going to be putting this hardware back on because I wanted to switch it up from being a wood look to a more of a traditional modern style. Remember, it's super important to clean every piece before you get started so that you can just start with a clean slate. Next, I used a combination of my 3x4 electric ray sander from Surf Prep and my 5-inch orbital sander from Surf Prep to sand down the top of this piece to raw wood. It ended up being a pine wood on the top, and I knew I wanted to stain it, but I wasn't quite sure what color yet. So I went ahead and taped off the top so that I could get started on the body of the piece. I filled up my HomeRite Super Finish Max with this new Annie Sloan satin paint that does not require scuff sanding or priming. I sprayed on the first coat of paint and it came out really nice. And I used my HomeRite Super Finish Max to get the job done super quick. Next, I sprayed on another coat of this beautiful green color, and once that second coat was done and dry, I moved on to the top. I removed the plastic and stained 2 coats of the color Tobacco Road from Dixie Belle. Next, I sealed up the top with Dixie Belle's Gator Hide, which does have a little bit of a glossier finish and is water resistant, but it's gonna give this dresser a really durable protective coat on the top. Since I sprayed the paint on with the drawers slid in, I had to use my Zebra Artist brushes and paint a couple of coats of the Annie Sloan paint on the edges of the drawers. Next, I grabbed out this beautiful brushed brass drum hardware that I got on Amazon and were really heavy duty and super nice quality. And I installed those on all 8 hardware holes. Again, here we are before with this reddish, outdating, failing finish of a wood dresser. And here it is now. I feel like I say this every time, but it was another top favorite of me this year. I love the color. I love the accent of the wood on the top. I think that they complement each other super well, and then that brass hardware just gives it another pop of color, but also brings everything together super nice. It sat on the market on Facebook for about a month and a half or so, and I ended up selling it for a total of $760. And after spending about $125 on the cost and materials to flip this piece, I ended up with a total profit of $635. So if you've been doing the math along with me, this is going to give us a total of 14 projects for the last 6 months of 2024. That means that in total, I actually flipped and sold 28 projects within the year of 2024, which I was super proud of. I did flip some other pieces that haven't sold yet, or some pieces for myself, so those aren't included in this video recap, but I just want to give you a total scope about the amount of money that can truly be made from flipping furniture, even if it is a side hustle. I don't flip furniture all day, every day. I have this content creation side of it. So if you're not doing the content creation side of it, you could totally make the same amount of money with flipping furniture as well, or potentially even more than that. So again, like I said, if you've been doing the math along with me, within these 14 projects that I sold and flipped these past 6 months, I ended up with a total profit of $10,270. And that is about an average of $730 per piece of furniture with profit. Now, I did do another 6-month recap in the middle of 2024, and I ended up profiting $13,605 in the first 6 months of 2024. So that means that total together with all the whole year involved, I was able to profit $23,875 within the year of 2024. Dividing that by my 28 projects, that gives me a total profit per project of around $850. I would say that that is a pretty great average. I love flipping furniture, so why not add a little bit of profit on top of the fun and the hobby that I have? So if you're interested in getting started flipping furniture in 2025, I am running a sale on my furniture flipping courses through the end of January, and then that is it. There's gonna be no more sales. So be sure and check that link out down below in the description. It's gonna be 50% off of my course bundle, which means that you are actually getting the bundle for less than one course by itself. I have a beginners to flipping course. This breaks down the entire process step by step and has over 2.5 hours of content for you guys to learn how to flip furniture. I talk about the piece, I talk about the products that you need to use, the process that goes with it, and then how you can make this profit that I am talking about in this video today. And then also the bundle comes along with a sprayer course, and that sprayer course is going to give you the step-by-step of using and working with a paint sprayer. There's 3 different paint sprayers, the electric paint sprayers that are highlighted in that video, but really all of the tips and tricks that I put in that video about those specific sprayers can be translated easily to so many different types of sprayers. So let me know if you have any questions down below in the comments. Also, I would absolutely love to hear which project of mine in these past 6 months in this video were your favorite, because I told you some of my favorites, and I would just love to know what you guys are into and what you've been liking. Thank you guys so much for watching. Thanks for all of the support throughout 2024. 2025 is going to be such a great year, and I am manifesting the greatness for all of you watching. Thank you so much for being here and watching and supporting me here at FFT. We'll see you on the flip side.